Hello and welcome back to the Breakdown podcast here on BS Rugby. On this week's edition, I was joined by Rob Hammerschmidt from the fantastic Rugby Rant podcast. With the USA hosting New Zealand this weekend, I thought it'd be fascinating to get his thoughts on how the growth of rugby in the US is going, the emergence of Major League Rugby and how that is boosting the sport. We did a fantastic chat as well about Canada's failure to qualify for the Rugby World Cup in 2023. And of course, we previewed this weekend's game against the All Blacks. Could the USA create a major shock across the rugby world? Before we get into it, of course, as it is the All Blacks, we have to talk about the tragic death that was Sean Wainui. I hope I'm saying that right. Apologise if I don't get it right. He unfortunately passed away earlier this week in a car crash. Only 25 years old. I played for the Maori All Blacks 10 times for them and 44 Super Rugby appearances for the Waikato Chiefs. So my thoughts and prayers go out to his family, his friends, and those impacted by this. And I hope that this weekend will be a fitting tribute to him as a player and as a person. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and get your thoughts in the comments down below. You can also listen on Spotify. There'll be a link in the description to check that out. If you are listening on there, please do give us a rating and follow us as well. Enjoy the episode. USA Rugby then facing the All Blacks. I'm joined by Rob the Hammerschmidt, host of the Rugby Rant podcast. How are you doing, mate?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you, sir, for having me on again. It's always a pleasure. I mean, you're one of the reasons I got involved in podcasting.
No, it's a pleasure to have you on as always. Let's have a talk then about the USA right now, because many people across the globe wouldn't often watch the USA or watch Major League Rugby, which we'll get into in a little bit. The most recent memory, I think, for most fans would be the 2019 Rugby World Cup, which, for being honest, was a bit of a shambles for the USA, losing all 4 games and some winnable games you felt in that group. What would you say the process has been since then? Because we had the bankruptcy situation. Gary Gold is still in charge. What do you make of the situation? What's the process been like over the past 2 years?
A lot of people want to simplify the process, simplify the problem, but I think it's a very, very deep issue, and there are a lot of positives to take away, a lot of and some negatives are things that have to be addressed. Obviously, I think one of the things we have to keep in mind, and Gary Gold had only come into the team, I think, within a year of the 2019 World Cup. So he hadn't really been able to put a stamp on who he wanted to play, how the team should play, and how he wanted to match up about with various teams. 2019 was a disappointment for sure. I mean, we had the interesting thing is, if you look at those games, there were quite a few games which we were keeping the scoreline fairly tight within the first half, but then those scorelines got opened up in the second half. So I think if I look beyond 2019, one of the things that I'm identifying as a fan and somebody who follows USA Rugby very closely is I want to see the USA be able to hang it a little bit more tightly in the second half. And one of the reasons that I see that as a barometer is because of the Major League Rugby. Major League Rugby and USA Rugby have worked very closely together. I think MLR has picked up the mantelpiece for some of the areas where some of the areas where we thought they should be doing the yeoman's work. But the MLR has picked up that mantelpiece. And I think one of the big benefits of the MLR is obviously, all the 32, 33-man roster are professional. So we only have about 5 guys that are not playing in the United States. All those other guys are playing in MLR rosters. And so, that wasn't true in 2019. So I think looking at it 2023 and beyond, that's one of the things that we have to be a bit excited about, is that we should have more depth. Now, when you have a front row coming in, you have a front row that's a professional front row. You have some back rowers where you can say, hey, the talent really hasn't dropped off all that much. And therefore, you should be able to say, hey, anything after 45, 50 minutes, those guys should be able to keep a score line fairly close. Yes, it was a B-side England, in July, but I think we saw that in July with England. Now it's just about consistency, and that's where at the national team level I'd like to see them improve is close that gap more consistently and win the games they should win, like they should have won that second Uruguay.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting situation for the USA. I remember that game against England in the World Cup, especially, and there's a red card pretty early on in the game. Yeah. So there's lots of mitigating factors. in there. You mentioned MLR, and I remember talking to you early on in the process of MLR and the whole idea of Major League Rugby coming on. And I think both of us are very, very happy to say that it's been a tremendous success. And we've seen fans buy into it. We've seen some new teams come in. We've seen a team go, but we've seen a team come in, new fans. It's been a roaring success, hasn't it? What do you think that's been down to? Why has it been so successful?
Well, I think one of the earmarks is the thing I pointed to earlier, provides a level of professionalism for all the individuals that are in the Eagle pool, and it provides a clear pathway for those that want to get into that Eagle pool. Now it's not just, when you reel back to 30 years when I was playing rugby, if you didn't play for Cal, you were unlikely to be selected, or if you were, it was going to be you'd really have to catch the right eyes at the right time. The ITTs or the territorials were one of the ways to do that. Now that's not the case. I think you have, guys are getting their opportunities, they're getting their looks, and obviously there's developmental sides with most of the MLR teams in which individuals can, even there's open tryouts. Individuals can go in those open tryouts and cut their teeth, so to speak, and develop and improve. I think you're seeing some collegiate programs become not professional in the truest sense of the term, but they have setups where they're training 5 days a week. They have a weights program. They have a physio. They're like at Lindenwood and Life, they have GPS. They're working with Jimmy Harrison, for example, is involved with the USA program, and he does a lot of the matrix and looks at GPS and crunches a lot of the numbers. And he's actually working with Lindenwood's program on a part-time basis. So they're doing film analysis. So in that respect, I think you're seeing the gap close with the MLR, the ability for that gap between professionalism and, amateur and professional, amateur and, university club athletics close quite a bit. But it is still, having said that, it's still a long way to go. But it's promising. And I think we have to take stock in that. And I think you see the MLR really doing a nice job trying to promote youth rugby, get their clubs to spread the gospel of rugby, and really try to encourage clubs to, get more and more fans involved in the game, or develop more fans through involvement in the game. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that was something I noticed very early on in the MLR, was that we saw the clubs really engaging with their fans, bringing their fans in, saying, rugby's for everyone. Doesn't matter if you don't fully understand the laws of the game or you understand the culture. It's okay. Come in, enjoy the feast that is rugby, and enjoy being part of this growing new community. It's exciting. It's new. What did you make of the past season of MLR? We saw the LA Guiltinis win. We did do a preview on the channel. Both you and Scott pretty much backed them to go pretty far in this year's competition, considering the depth that they had. Adam Ashley Cooper, Matt Gitto, to name a few. What did you make of the season? Did you enjoy it, or was it a good experience for you as a New Orleans fan? How did you see it?
That's a multi-layered question, my man. Overall, MLR wide, it was a great season. It was engaging. There were a lot of great storylines. There were some interesting challenges, obviously, without a year in advance pre-planned program for the July tests. That was kind of something that some of the teams, and NOLA, Rooney, I think NOLA and Rooney were the two teams that were most heavily affected by the July tests. Those threw a curveball in it, and some teams adjustments and preparation right there at the end of the season, when teams are really starting to find their way into the playoff mix. So that was a challenge, but it made for some great drama. It made for some interesting stories, and it was quite enjoyable. I think one of the things that we can come away with MLR wide as well is the fact that George Killebrew understands that in order for rugby to be successful in the United States, and then for any sport to be successful for that matter, it's just that most of them have had a head start. It's got to be a rugby-tainment industry, right? I mean, you look at the Super Bowl, and it's not just about the Super Bowl. It's about the advertising, the new advertisers, the interesting and fun commercials. It's about the halftime spectacle. It's about the fireworks. It's about, the 2 weeks leading up and the interviews. It's about everything. And it just happens to be built around a football game, an American football game. I think rugby's the same way. And by the way, the LA Giltinis and the Austin Gilgronis have led the league in that regard. Steve Aoki coming and doing the pregame and the postgame. He's a huge DJ that gets a huge following nationwide, I'm sure worldwide as well. Not my style, but I get it. Having somebody like that in the house. Austin working with the Austin Music Foundation to having musical events at every match. And then having the theme nights, bringing in different groups like that, a college theme night for the Gilgronis where there was, discounts on food and beverage and things like that and ticketing. So, it's I think George has really emphasized this is more, if we want to be professional, we got to be more than rugby. It's got to be something, the entertainment's got to bring people in and then say, okay, and then here's a great game, by the way, that you can enjoy. On a micro level, it's hard to believe that NOLA could go into the last 6 away games, win 5 of them, and still miss out on the playoffs. I mean, that was an absolute disappointment. I've had some conversations with Coach O and Coach GM Ryan Fitzgerald quite a bit. I was just texting Coach Ryan today about Kyle Bailey going back up north of the Toronto Arrows. But I think everybody was massively disappointed. And we'll talk, I'm sure, about 2022 and what's in store. But, if anybody's been paying attention to the league, they know NOLA is at least trying to address some of those concerns. But yeah, a little bit disappointed for the goal that they missed out, especially with that good run. But, it just proves a point that, and again, the storylines, I guess, is one of the things you can point towards. Look, they lost to ATL by 1 point at home. They didn't have somebody that could put that dropper in and secure the victory and secure, down the road, secure an opportunity to be in the playoffs. They lost to the Gilgronis by, they lost by a try, but they were ahead and lost just in the last couple minutes. So, those are, yes, it's a loss for NOLA. Yes, I was disappointed. Yes, I was throwing stuff across my house, and my dog was worried about me. My kids were worried about me. But ultimately, isn't that what we love about sport, right? I mean, that's why we watch. And sometimes we're on the winning end and sometimes we're on the losing end. But damn it, it brings us back. So, yeah, overall, love the season.
Yeah, as an Ospreys fan, when we played against the Sharks recently and we were shit, and let me tell you, there were things being thrown across my flat as well. It wasn't a pretty sight. But yeah, I think MLR for me has really approached it the right way and has gone from the start, said, this is how we're going to approach it. This is how we're going to go about it. And they've stuck to it. They've stuck to their guns. It's all about community, bringing people in, saying this is for everyone. That's the beauty of rugby. In football or soccer, as you would say, fans are separated in stadiums all the time. But in rugby, people sit together, have a beer together. You might lose, but at the end, you buy your mate a beer and say, do you know what, you won? Here's a beer on me. And I think MLR's really got into that community element. So as you said, 2022, what's it looking like ahead of that? More just to continue to build upon what has been done already, or are there some more exciting plans on the way for MLR?
No, the answer is yes. I mean, all of it. There's been some interesting signings so far. I don't think by any stretch of the imagination those signings are done. We can talk about and get into some of those if you like. But there's going to be growth, obviously, in the immediacy. Dallas is coming into the league next year. We expect them to be in full boat. And they had their fair share of signings. A couple of those look pretty interesting, and they brought some guys back that were originally going to be with them, then were picked up by other teams. One of those guys I always like to talk about, Bronson Tellis. He's a great kid, but he's coming back to Dallas. And there's a couple other guys that are going to be back for Dallas that were originally supposed to be there, and then they picked up a few signings. Of course, for the folks in the UK, Brian Ashton has come on board as kind of a rugby consultant. We saw this with Eddie Jones in the Legion last year. COVID, I think, kind of impacted that. But quite frankly, I will really be interested to see what kind of impact that has, or if we can actually see a tangible impact that somebody like that brings. So we're going to have another team in the league. Hopefully we'll see some expansion after that to the Midwest. That remains to be seen. There's been a lot of chatter about it. What I don't know is what the league plans to do beyond. There's got to be a saturation point with only 10 foreign player spots in the starting roster, in your starting 23, game day 23. There's going to be a limit to the talent that's in the United States. So, at least for some duration, will we see kind of a settling down of the expansion until we start to see the next generation of young ruggers come through and start to fill the U.S.-based roster spots. So, that's exciting and interesting. And then it's going to be interesting to see where the league at the macro level, what they do with their sponsorship. They came through with some big sponsors with Geico, with Guaranteed Rate, with American Airlines, OBX, Wintergreen. So it'll be interesting to see how their corporate sponsorship goes. And I'm excited about the Rugby Network. It's been, rugby's been notorious worldwide for having a paywall, and it's been really nice to see that we can at least watch our domestic sport free. And through our phones, through our tablets, through our computers, or through Roku devices or whatever have you. So that's been real nice. And the Rugby Networks carried the collegiate sevens, which for American fans, I think there was a lot of enjoyment in that, because it's not just about the MLR, it's about spreading the gospel of rugby in any way we can, with any level we can.
Yeah, I've been really impressed by the Rugby Network. I've been able to watch quite a few games over here and catch quite a few games over the course of the season. It's free, something that with this autumn internationals here in the UK, everything's going on Amazon Prime. It's behind a paywall. First time that's happened for Welsh, for Wales games anyway, that you'll have to pay to watch the game live. Let's move on to the USA then. So they've got quite an interesting game coming up this weekend, to say the least, against the All Blacks. I'm going to ask you a question. You can either answer it honestly, or you can work your way around it. Is this really for rugby, or is it more for business, do you think, with this game? Does it truly grow the game of rugby? Because it's going to create fanfare, but does it have a lasting impact on rugby in the USA, do you think?
I think the answer is yes to both. I think part of it is a business opportunity. Interesting, on the Rugby Rant, we had one of our common ranters come on, Daryl, came on, and we just recorded last night as of when we're recording here. And, he said it would have been great to see like a New Zealand play Wales in the United States, and then have the United States play a curtain raiser against the Maori, or against, Romania or something of that nature. And while I on the rugby end agree, it would have been pretty expensive to put something like that on, because then you're paying for 3 unions to come here in the United States. And quite frankly, I just don't think they're going to get the economic benefit that you would having just New Zealand. So I think there's a financial benefit there. But truth be told, I think there truly is. The game is going to be grown through graft, through just hard work, and just putting your nose to the grindstone and just working away and chiseling away at it. It's not going to be a spark. It's going to be it's going to be like water running through a creek bed and just rounding out over time those rocks. It's just going to take time. And quite frankly, there was actually a Republican senator from West Virginia that spoke yesterday on the floor of the Senate. He actually called attention to this match and invited all his fellow colleagues to come to the game, and because it's in DC, go to the game and enjoy this international competition, kind of get outside the political fray, the political, division that's in the United States, and put your arm around your mate and come together and watch this wonderful game. So, just simply getting on the political radar, I think is a tick in the right box, right? But I think, too, it's going to draw fans in that you wouldn't, again, normally get, that come to watch the game. I can remember when the All Blacks came in both 2014 and 2016. There were people that went to the game that I've been friends with for years that, aren't rugby people, but they went to the game anyway. And so anytime you have a name like the All Blacks, it's going to bring a level of panache, going to bring a level of interest. It's going to raise attention to the game. And I think it's at a critical moment for the United States, for USAR and rugby in the United States, because you have the growth of a new professional league. In addition, of course, as of the recording today, the United States actually announced a North American bid for the women's and men's World Cups, either 2027 for the men or 2031, and of course the 2029 women's. So, hopefully all this positive energy will see some dividend, here as we move forward the next 10 years.
No, I agree with you. I think it is a bit of both, isn't it? It's a fantastic way to grow the game, to get people involved in the sport who may not have been involved before. And we saw the success when Ireland came over and faced the All Blacks in Vegas, was it? I want to say it was in
No, that was in Chicago.
In Chicago, yeah, Soldier Field, wasn't it? And
2018, yeah.
Because Ireland beat the All Blacks, didn't they? Quite late on in the game. And I think for the US, if they can combine MLR with this game and draw attention to it and make it a product that is attractive to the consumers in the USA, because you would know the market of the USA a lot better than I would, and what
yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I just read an article that it's one of the fastest growing women's team sports in the United States. So it's growing in the women's segment, and I think that's a segment that perhaps gets ignored, but needs to be acknowledged, because women who play rugby, oftentimes later on in life, they have children, and they tend to promote it as a sport. So I think there's a rebound effect down the road. I want to touch upon the fact that while the United States, in all likelihood, has a hard road to hoe to beat the All Blacks, no doubt about it. How else do you know what level you have to get to unless you test yourself every once in a while? And yes, it's an extremely hard test, but I think the benefit of this one is that you're going to be able to play some players, young players, that and give them something to focus on as not only just an opportunity for now, but to give them an idea of what they need to be working towards, right? They're not expected to win. So why not play an open style? Why not get some young guys who can throw it around a little bit, who can generate some energy in the game plan and see what they can do and blood those guys against the best. And that brings eyes to the sport in the United States. But again, the part of the problem in the United States is you have, 4 major sports that you're competing with. So, the difficulty is when do you insert a season? You don't want to compete with American football. So you got to go someplace in the spring. So it's placed pretty well. It's a tough sports market is tough in the United States because of all the competition. So quite frankly, I think we need to keep working at it, and geographically we're a big country. So it's hard sometimes to get everybody on the same page, and just at a men's and women's club level, when do you have the national championships? Well, here in Chicago, it could snow on Thanksgiving heavily. And so do you have them in the fall or do you have the national championships in the spring? Those are some of the difficulties. Down in New Orleans, they're starting to play their club season in January. So it can make some cohesion across the country a little bit challenging. But we got to find ways to work through that and work around it. And I think we will. It just, again, takes hard work and time.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It's all about a process of getting people in and creating that generation after generation of buying into rugby, buying into the sports. And as you said, it's going to take time. And, that's the one thing USA maybe struggles with compared to the UK. I can get to London in 4 hours on a car. I can get up to Glasgow in 5 hours in a car, and in the USA, that's just not an option. You touched on it there, the bid for the World Cup. Now, I remember having you on the channel, it's been over a year ago, and talking about, are the USA ready to host a Rugby World Cup? Well, all of a sudden, this has turned around pretty quickly, hasn't it? We now have an official bid going in for the men's and for the women's game. How do you feel about that? Excited, nervous? Are the USA ready for it? How are you feeling about it?
So you got to be excited when you make a bid for the Rugby World Cup, because it's going to at least put all eyes on the United States and potentially North America if Canada is in on the bid for that 6 or 8 week time. Now that they're potentially adding another another kind of element or adding to the depth, shall we say, of those who are included, we could see it extended, I think, to from 6 weeks to 8 weeks. But nevertheless, you got to be excited. And you got to be excited because the women should be expected to do well. I mean, they'll get into the knockout stage, and they've been in the top 5 or 6, and I think with some there's some women going and playing professionally in the UK. Kate Zachary, we've had her on the Rugby Rant before, and a few other women. I think that's gonna help them perform better, just elevating the standard. What does make me nervous is where the United States sits right now, because even though we're talking about whether or not the United States can qualify in 2023, and we need to go down and take care of business in Chile, right? And even if we don't, we still have the repechage, which we can qualify and get through. So we kind of it makes me nervous, but there's a couple different options and pathways there. The concern is if we turn out like Canada and don't make it. Right, if we don't qualify. So what you're really talking about is not qualifying in 2023. Then you really got to think, for example, Canada really has to be introspective and look and see where they're at, and they really have to start the gears in motion for 2027. And we know the bid is for 2027. So if you're not even qualifying in the World Cup prior to when you're bidding, that makes me nervous. I think they'll get the job done, but I think you really have to be realistic and think like Japan did, which is, okay, we've got to make our mark probably one World Cup prior to the one we host. And we saw them actually beat South Africa in 2015 and kind of become a team that could make an upset happen. And of course, they delivered on the pitch in 2019. So they did what they needed to do. And I think we need to be prepared for 2027 because I don't think we're going to get that bid. I think it's really going to be 2031. I think 2027 is going to go to Australia. And so I think in 2027, we need to be able to, well, in 2023, we need to win a match or two. And in 2027, we need to be able to knock on that door of potentially being in the hunt to qualify. I don't know that we'll be at the point where we will, but it would be nice to see that we do. So there's, I think, again, a lot of work to be done here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if the USA can really, as you said, I think 2027 maybe is a little bit too soon. Again, Australia haven't had a World Cup since 2003. Be looking to build upon that, but there is a big mark in the USA. You mentioned about Canada. I know we're talking about the USA, but how big of a blow is this to Canadian rugby? Because it's a massive surprise, isn't it? First time that they won't be part of a Rugby World Cup. How big of an issue do you think this is for Canadian rugby?
It's an issue, no doubt. And I think and again, I'm not probably perhaps as close to this as some of the fans and friends that I have that are up north that have come on the Rugby Rant. Doug Wilkie is a great example. Derek Brissett. The thing I think that frustrates them is there's been some political dynamics that happened right around the Olympics or just after the Olympics that really threw a mental wrench in the national view of the game. I'm not going to get into that because I don't know much about the politics. I just know it caused a little bit of an uproar. Did that have an impact on the national team? I don't know, but it certainly makes them reconsider what they're doing and how they're doing it, some of their processes. Beyond that, I think probably more frustrating to Canadian rugby fans or Rugby Canada fans is I really thought that they would see a more net benefit to having the Toronto Arrows having 13 or 16 guys on their squad playing together throughout an MLR season and then going into the national team mix. Now, keep in mind that national team didn't have all its players available. Those that were on European duty weren't totally available, but still you would have thought that the continuity would have been there. And quite frankly, I thought that they did that in St. John's in Canada. If you haven't gone back and have a chance to watch the game, I don't even know it's available, on online or on any other networks. But when I watched the game, I mean, they demonstrated they had the continuity there. And then for some reason, the wheels fell off the apple cart in Glendale, and they just couldn't put it together. And certainly didn't come together any better when they played Chile. So it's quite a worry. And I in some sense, I think they're going to have to go back and just, whether they clean house or just do a top to bottom review of what they do and how they do it. They're going to have to find a way to get a pathway going, because it's the first time they've ever missed a World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's massive for Canada missing out. I mean, Chile have an opportunity to qualify, which would be amazing for them. Obviously not against the USA. Let's hope the USA can get the job done there. Let's talk about the USA now then. They obviously have the All Blacks on the horizon. Let's focus on this game. The last 7 games for the USA haven't really been amazing. 6 losses, but you have played some pretty tough teams, losing against Ireland and England recently. Ahead of this game, where are you feeling about this squad? As you said before, is it about, this is an opportunity to grow the game, or one opportunity for some of the youngsters to face the haka, to play against a team that I'm shitting myself as a Wales fan with the All Blacks coming, because we're going to get battered. But it isn't a heck of an opportunity for the USA to say, hey, look at us. Look what we can do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the thing you got to take pride and stock in as an American fan or a fan of the Eagles is they're putting their hand up. I mean, let's face it, a lot of teams could, a lot of people want to play, well, can't we just play, Romania or, some other tier 2 teams? And that's no disrespect to Romania, but, those are games in which we could be much more competitive, right? That's easy to do, but is it what you should always be doing? I mean, don't you always want to put your hand up and say, yeah, we'll do it. We'll take on one of the best teams, one of the top nations in the world, and see if we can stand toe to toe. What am I looking for out of the game? First of all, I don't care how you cut the cake. They did a real nice, Rugby Pass did a real nice article. I referred to it in the Rugby Rant here that's coming out on tomorrow night. They did a prediction of who will be in the All Black squad. Now, I don't know how accurate they're going to be, but they made some predictions, and a lot of it was based upon guys that haven't played in quite some time, coming into the fold and kind of seeing if they can, be in a position to make the team. Guys like Shannon Frizzell, guys like Dan Coles, guys like Sam Whitelock, because he had his wife had a baby. Finley Christie has been out and hasn't really been a standard bearer at the 9 position. Hoskins Sotutu. Some of those guys I mentioned are no slouches. Sam Kane coming back from injury. I mean, he was the All Black captain. We're likely to see him. Will Jordan and George Bridge have been mainstays over the course of the last 18 months within the lineup. They've struggled with form, but hey, they're tremendous players. So this is going to be a very, very tough match. Richie Mwanga is coming back at fly-off probably, if one goes by this predicted team. I mean, is there aside from Bowen Barrett, is there a more electric player in World Rugby right now? I mean, he has the ability to do some amazing things both with and without the ball. So it's going to be tough. What I'd like to see is a couple young guys either get a start or come in late. I've got over my shoulder here, I've got Andrew Gara, his jersey. I'd like to see Andrew get the nod at the 7 position. I'd like to see Ben Bonasso get in the mix, because I think he could be a kind of as Cam. I love Cam Dolan. Cam's 31. He's not going to be able to be the standard bearer 8 forever. Somebody's going to have to step up and fill his shoes. We know he does a tremendous job in the line-out, and really guides that line out. So can we get a guy like Benji to step in there and be that line-out captain and really drive them? But one of the big things, who is going to be the person that steps in and covers the 10 position for AJ? AJ's he's been in and out of the lineup because of injury, and he carries a load for sale, right? And so his body takes some wear and tear. We need to find somebody that can control the ball and control the pace of the game at 9 and at 10. And I would like to see Gary Gold take a risk this weekend. I'd like them to see. I'd like to see him put a more dynamic 9. Ruben does a great job at controlling the ball with the box kick and with his foot. But I'd like to see somebody who gets that ball out quick to the fly into the centers. And then I'd like to see, again, them find an option at 10 that is a threat to run with the ball as well as a threat to spring those centers loose. Because I've always said Bryce Campbell's a load at the center. If he finds an angle and gets a soft shoulder, he can go through, and then he has the ability to offload to his teammates. And we've got Lopete. This kid, I'm telling you, watch out for this kid at center. He is an American gem. He played tremendous against Canada, played tremendous against Uruguay. He was one of the bright spots for me. Pay attention to Lopete. He's going to be in the MLR, but I think after next year, he will find his way someplace in Europe. He is that good. He is young. He is dynamic. And we have a bright future if we could keep him in the mix for the next 7 to 8 years by the time we hit the World Cup, maybe the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough test, obviously, for the USA. And I think the big thing for me, the way you need to try and stop the All Blacks, if that's even possible, having watched them in the Rugby Championship, the thing that really impressed me with them is their speed of ball, the ability. They hit the breakdown, quick ball out, TJ, whatever his surname is, gets the ball, fires it out to Bowden Barrett or to Mwanga, and they're off. Ardie Surveyor at 6 or 7 turns the ball over. They're at the breakdown, always offside like Richie McCaw, but we won't get into that too much. But what do the USA need to get right on Saturday? Now, I'm going to be totally honest. I don't expect the USA to win the game. I don't think you'd expect that either. But what do the USA need to do in this game to make it competitive, at least to make it entertaining for the fans? Because speed of ball for the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship has just been ridiculous. So what do the USA need to get right, do you think, to stand a chance in this game?
I guess I don't look at it in that way. What I look at it is, what can the USA do to sharpen their game, right? Because for me, this game is more about moving forward than the game in and of itself, right? So I think for me on the offensive end, I would like to see us keep ball in hand. I would like us to develop our structure at the centers. I would like to see us spring our wings and see our wings get some touches on the ball. Again, Laupete at one of the centers can be devastating. See what he can do. We have a couple real good young dynamic wings. Christian Dyer, who, by the way, will be on the Rugby Rant here upcoming in the next few weeks. But he has some real promise. So get the ball out on offense. Keep the ball in hand. Don't kick it away. Because quite frankly, unless you put your wings are able to put pressure, or your fullback is able to put pressure on the All Black backs when you kick it, they're going to run it back down your throat with time, right? So if we start kicking to them, it's a mistake, right? We need to keep ball in hand. We need to play with the ball. If we kick it and we don't get pressure on them, they're going to run it back at us. And we know the All Blacks are devastating at counterattacking rugby, right? That transition from defense to offense. That being said, I would like to see them put themselves into positions where they do have to transition a little bit, not necessarily with the box kick, maybe through grubber kicks, maybe through, putting the ball into touch. And we know they like to go fast, if given time, they like to get that ball back in quickly and then run it up. So how can get yourself organized, work on your defensive organization at the counter attack, because that's what they do well. So why not really focus on that as something to get right moving forward? Because if you can defend against the All Blacks when they're counterattacking and when they're in that transition from defense to offense, then you can play that way. You can resist that pressure against any team in the world if you get it right with the All Blacks. So that's what I would like to see, just some improvement in those areas.
Yeah, I think the All Blacks, as you said, in that transition, they're so good, because I think the main thing for them is everyone is very comfortable on the ball all the forwards comfortable with ball in hand, know which pass to do. It's not about, oh, I'm a prop, I get the ball, I must go into contact, I must put my head down and just go into contact. Sometimes it's about, actually, look out, the fly half's behind me, 10 yards behind me, I'll spring it out to him, and then he can play it through the backs. I'm aware of time, so I'm going to ask you a quick couple of questions. What would be a successful game for the USA? What would make you think, all right, I can see something here, this is good? And how do you see the game going?
Number one, they need to score. They need to score a try. I mean, for me, if they can score 2 tries, maybe take advantage of a couple penalty opportunities, to me that would be a mark of success, because I don't know that they've ever scored a try against the All Blacks. So again, you got to start with baby steps. We can't expect them to put 30 points up against the All Blacks. Just let's get a couple tries. Let's take advantage of a couple penalty opportunities. I would like them to see it a reasonable score within the first half. What is a reasonable score? If they can keep it 25 and still put a few points, again, to put some points up in the first half, but keep it within 25 points in the first half, I think that's reasonable. Mark of success. And I'm not trying to diss my guys. Okay. Cam, Andrew, you guys are listening, Matt Harmon, I'm not dissing you guys, but we got to look at the history. We got to look at and be realistic. And I think those are realistic goals for the United States. And then get a second level of player in there. And I don't, what I mean, let me rephrase that. The finishers need to be true finishers. They can't be, all right, what's our second next best player? I think what they have to develop is guys who are finishers. That's the devastating thing about New Zealand and about a lot of your first tier countries, particularly New Zealand. So you can take a Bowden Barrett off at 10 and you can put in Richie Mwanga or vice versa. Okay. It's your 1A and 1A double A. Right. And that's what we need to develop. We need to develop strength and depth. And so if we can bring guys in, at some particular positions that are able to provide that depth and there's not much of a drop off and they're still able to compete successfully, I think that's a third mark that I'd look to.
Yeah, I think, keep the score respectable. But I think the big thing for the USA is discipline in this game. If they can keep their discipline and try and slow that ball down, and the breakdown is going to be massive. It always is massive in a game, but try and slow the ball down if you can. But, I mean, it's always going to be tough against New Zealand. We faced them first game for our autumn internationals, and I'm shitting myself because we are definitely not ready for that. Finally, just before we finish, tell me a little bit about the Rugby Rant, about how it came about, what you guys do, and where people can find you.
So the Rugby Rant came about because Ty, Scott, and I had nothing better to do during COVID. So we just started it in we've been at it for about a year and a half. It's been growing successfully of about 4,000 or 5,000, people that follow consistently. And then we've got a bunch of other people that, watch and come back to us. We do every week, we do an interview live with somebody significant. As I said, we covered Abby Gustitis, who is married to Alex Corbisiero. So for people in the UK, British Irish Lines and English prop. But she's a US Sevens player. She was on last week. We're going to be having Bryce Campbell on. So captain of the United States. He's coming on actually, I think, next week on the 25th. So he'll just finish with the All Blacks and he's going to be joining us on the show. So that should be exciting. And then we always have a show that releases on Thursday night, and we cover all kinds of topics in North America, Rugby Canada, United States. We cover the PR7s. We obviously cover the United States. We cover the MLR. So cover lots of things. And we're looking forward to 2022. It's going to be an interesting season, especially with Dallas added to the mix. And, there's always talk about the Midwest being a player in Major League Rugby. So whenever we hear those rumors, we all get, excited and tingly all inside. So we look forward to that. But it's really good. So you can find us on all major outlets, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, all those things. And we're of course at Rugby Rant Pod. We're on Facebook. You can get it through the MLR Fan Zone. So we try to get ourselves out there as much as possible so that people can find out a little bit more about rugby in the United States.
So there we go. That's the end of this week's episode of the Breakdown Podcast. I hope you have enjoyed. As always, if you have and you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like on the video, and get your thoughts in the comments down below. Massive thank you to Rob Hammerschmidt from the Rugby Rant podcast for his time and his knowledge on USA Rugby. The links to everything that they do will be down below. I urge you to go and check it out. It's certainly worth listening to, and they are far more knowledgeable than I am on the subject. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget, if you've listened on Spotify, to give us a review, follow the podcast, and we'll see you very soon here on the Breakdown Podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.